Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Befriending the Internet, the show in which I tell you what's on my mind, what's going on with me, and I also respond to the thoughts that you have about what's going on with me. And I gotta say, the comments on the first episode were excellent. It's only been out for about 5 hours at the time of this recording, and even a few hours ago I already had enough to respond to make another video. I've got all these comments, and I tried to do something like this once before. You may remember I had like just a comment response series I tried to launch on After Dark one time, and I constantly found myself in this like this feeling of like, oh, I don't know if I should like make one of these every day. Like, is that going to be too many? And like, there's so many good comments. Like, do I record as soon as there's enough comments for me to respond to? Like, how? Because there's always going to be more good comments that appear. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. All right, I'm just going to address whatever comments I have access to right now. If it turns out that there are other great comments on the previous episode that I still want to respond to, I will do that in the next episode. So, you know, or I'll just respond to them in the actual comments by, you know, typing out a response. It took me about an hour to figure out what game I was going to play. Well, actually, it took me an hour to download this game, and I spent that hour trying to see if there was something else I wanted to play. Because A Short Hike is very short, and I pretty much explored it like as much as I possibly could on the last episode. So I had to find another game that I can just run around and just mindlessly fucking explore in. Honestly, Ocarina of Time is even better from mindlessness in this game, but this is the comfiest fucking game. This is just the comfiest fucking game. So we're just going to jump right into answering questions because I suspect that it's going to take me a long time to answer each of these questions, and that they will lead me into branching paths of thought anyways, and that if I try to talk about anything else first, I will never finish talking about that thing. So, I'm first going to read like a sort of long, I'm not going to read the whole comment, but sections of this comment from Janine Garofalo, I assume not the actual actress Janine Garofalo, left a very long comment threaded with some really good questions that I thought answering those first would probably be a good bridge into answering some of the other questions that other people have. So I'm just going to read sections of their question first of all. It says, and this is responding to me at the time code 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 10 seconds. I'm glad this was brought up, even if it was only slightly, because it has always been something that has bothered me for the longest time, and one of the first things I thought about when I heard you decided to change how you identify. This idea that transness is somewhat contradictory with egalitarian philosophies due to the fact that it appears to base itself on gender stereotypes rather than individuality. Like, is someone that does not fall into the stereotype of their born sex automatically trans? As you mentioned, it does feel pretty anti-feminist to assume that any woman that doesn't act like a woman isn't a woman and vice versa. But then, does it just boil down to individual choice of how one wants to present themselves? According to your perspective, the answer is undoubtedly yes, and I would agree, but there is a lot of frustration because it feels like the vast majority of people believe the opposite. Probably because the word trans also includes and seemingly originated with those with dysmorphia, a more realizable and less controllable symptom. Do you think that there should be separate labels for those like yourself and those that struggle with self-image in different ways? So, this is a complicated question to answer because of the fact there's also more there are more questions from this comment, but I wanted to do this one first. So I want to talk about dysmorphia and dysphoria, the feeling of like hating your body and not feeling at home in it. I think that the human spirit is a fascinating thing. I think that, first of all of us are dealing with some sort of dysphoria with the world that we live in that we are not capable of living the way that humans are sort of meant to in this world. Like, humans, like any animals, are, you know, first and foremost, driven by instinct, and are most capable of, like, understanding themselves when operating mostly on instinct. And, like, when we think about normies, these are essentially people who are most capable of operating on instinct within the world as it stands, because of the fact that not many things about the way that they want to live their lives contradict, the rules established by society. Now, most normies, I think there's definitely like a large category of people who like by and large don't have to think that hard in order to like fit in and do their job and like fulfill their role and feel a sense of purpose, because ultimately that's what we need as humans. We need a sense of purpose in order to live, in order to feel as though like there's a purpose. Like in order to not be suicidal, we need to feel as though we are living for a reason. And it's not that we have to have like a clearly stated reason that we can actually explain to people. Again, it's more of a feeling. It's more about thinking that what you are doing is contributing to society in some kind of meaningful way, that you are okay to be yourself and to to live in the world, that you are contributing and you are not a detriment with your existence. I think that's the way people want most to feel. Is like, I am not a detriment. I am worthwhile, And it can be difficult to find yourself worthwhile because you might not have you might not fit into society easily. It might be that other people don't think that you acting naturally is beneficial, or that they think you need to suppress elements of yourself in order to be a better fit for the society you belong to. Or maybe you feel that way. Maybe other people are fine with you, but you think that you're doing something wrong because you can't live up to your own ideals about like what you think would make somebody valuable to society. A lot of people fit into society just fine, and then there's the people who feel as though they cannot find purpose in this world while remaining true to themselves. And so they try to become somebody else. It's like, okay, well, I suck, so if I can be somebody who is cool, then then maybe I'll be able to make it. And so you try to look for something that's like within the realm of what you are capable of and also acceptable, or either to others or to yourself. Like, acceptable insofar as you think, okay, well, I can do this thing, and I feel good about the fact that I can do this thing, so I'm going to keep doing this thing, and hopefully, I will continue to enjoy it, and people will continue to approve of me doing this. Or if they don't approve of it, at the very least, I continue to get something out of it. So, like, I think it's all about that approval. It's all about either yourself or others approving of what you do. And one or the other is the one that's probably going to be harder for you. Like, some people have a really easy time accepting themselves and a really difficult time accepting society, and vice versa. And like, I began as somebody who had an easy time accepting myself because I was raised in a household of acceptance. I was raised by a mom who considered it like paramount that you be true to yourself, and that like, if other people tell you that it's wrong, then fuck them, And so I lived that way pretty much up until it came to a point where like I could not be friends with anyone, because like this mentality of trying to be true to myself when nobody appreciates me being true to myself means that I can't make any friends. Like, if people don't want to be around me, then I have to learn how to change to be somebody who they would want to be around, And it took me a really long time to figure out how to do that, because most kids observe the other kids around them, pick up on what they're doing and what works, and they copy certain elements, and then they become whoever they're going to be through this like amalgam of the stuff that they've learned and picked up on, from themselves and others. So like, for me as a kid, because I moved constantly, I never had that opportunity to like really discover what the people around me were doing. And I was so insular that, like, I wouldn't ask, you know, I didn't, like, interact with people. So it was just, like, a mystery to me, pretty much until high school when, like, I realized these things about myself. I realized that I was the odd man out, that I, you know, it's like I realized that it was going to be my responsibility to figure out what was wrong with me because nobody else was going to do it. You know, like, nobody's just going to accept me without explanation. Nobody's going to... you know, it's never going to be so easy. And that was like what I was saying in the last video where I said that, like, maybe things would have been so much simpler if, like, from a young age I had just accepted the idea that I was a girl, that, like, oh, you're all right, you everyone else is correct, I'm the one who's wrong. Yes, I am a girl, I do want to be into all these feminine hobbies, I do want to hang out with girls and you know, and be treated as though I were one. But, like, you know, because I was not that way, I did not have an environment where people understood what the hell was going on in my mind, you know? So, like, I think that once I started to learn... I have to, like, reread the question again to make sure I know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, like, when I went through puberty, as I talked about in the last episode, I became deeply uncomfortable with my body because of the fact that it no longer looked the way it used to. And, like, it took me a really long time to get used to not being the shortest kid everywhere I went. It took me a really long time to get used to not being small, not being, like weak and unassuming, you know, because, like, as a kid I was really weak. Like, I could not do, like, any physical activities at all, you know. I was super skinny, very low pain tolerance, and so, like, you know, like, once I suddenly grew, it's like those things are no longer true. They still feel true, though. Like, I still feel the same, so for me to look so different and to be, like, interpreted so differently, you know, feels really strange because, like, you know, I don't feel any different. And that's kind of how I feel about this whole trans thing as well. It's like, a lot of people are really confused about why I would choose to identify differently because they see it as, like, I always thought of you as somebody who was going to do whatever you want anyways, who was always going to present the type of person that, you know, that you wanted to be, first and foremost. And I think that I did, but it was from a place of denial. It's like, yes, I'm expressing to you what I want to express, in terms of, like, what I think I can, you know? So again, this comes back to what I said about, like, people want to be able to be a person that will be accepted, be a person that will be, you know, that will be capable of, I'm, like, having to think for a second to figure out what the fuck I need to do here on Outset Island. Obviously, I did not read any of the text. I just assumed I would know what I was doing because I've played this game before. But, you know how the start of a game tends to be. There's all this, like, stuff you gotta do before, like, the adventure really begins. Somebody said that they thought I was doing a stereotypical gay voice on the, on the comments of the last video. Oh, I'm looking for the post box. It's just the way I sound, bro. You know, it's funny. I don't think I've been talking that differently. I have always been somebody who experiments heavily with my voice. And, like, the voice that you have gotten used to, the Digibro voice, is not my quote-unquote natural speaking voice. First of all, that's not really a thing. People develop speaking habits. People speak differently to different people, in different circumstances, you know, based on the sound environment that you're in. Like, people have always told me it's really funny when they hear me order food, because I tend to order food like this. I go, yeah, I'd like to get a large lemonade and 2 big, because I know that talking that way causes your voice to cut through those the microphones that they use more clearly, so, like, they'll guaranteed understand me if I talk that way. Whereas a deeper, bassier voice won't come through that speaker as easily. Well, here on this microphone that I'm using right now, I've gotten very used to knowing what kind of voice sounds good in this mic. what kind of resonant frequencies will work well, and I've learned to talk that way when I talk at length, because that's the way that will sound best on a microphone. And years of practice have caused this to become a very natural voice for me, but it's not the voice I used to use. Like, if you listen to super old podcasts of mine, you'll notice I slur my speech a lot more. I'm not as clear. I have a much more southern accent. I bred those things out of my speaking so I could speak for video. And, like, yeah, there are times where I am, like, literally trying to put on a more, forced feminine voice, because I do want to be seen as a woman, and I don't expect people to have an easy time doing that if I sound like a man. But I cannot, like, simply flip a switch and be able to speak naturally while also doing a voice. Like, I can voice act, I can perform voices for temporary reasons, I have a huge vocal range, I can sing all kinds of different voices, like, creating a feminine voice is not difficult. Like,
if all I really care about is just, sounding high-pitched, then all I really have to do is, find a high-pitched voice, and any of these voices, technically,
any voice that I do, it could, there's a million ways you could sound feminine. Like, I don't know what I want my feminine voice to sound like yet. I want it to be something that arises naturally from just, speaking in a way that is more clear to the, emotional intentions of what I'm saying. And, there's a lot of benefits to having a masculine voice. Again, trying to speak more clearly is largely about, somebody explained to me that the way to sound more effeminate is to have more of a sing-song in the way that you speak, and that more masculine is more like boulders falling with each word being very individual and singled out. But this is also just the difference between being easy to understand and being hard to understand. To put it another way, most people find women annoying. Most people only find women not annoying when they are fucking that woman. And so, speaking as somebody who was told I was annoying my whole life, especially on the internet when I was acting true to myself, I developed a manner of speaking that people don't find annoying. I developed a manner of speaking that people respect me and think I sound cool and vaguely intelligent, I guess. But, the only reason that that it comes off that way is that I manufactured that voice. I manufactured a voice that I could use to sound good. And it came with a lot of practice. This voice did not just spring naturally up. I experimented heavily with it. And I mean, if you listen to my videos, there really has never been a consistent voice. Maybe more recently there has been. But if you listen to the older videos in particular, I would test out different voices all the time. There's tons of videos that I deliberately read in the cadence of other YouTubers, that I, write in the style of other YouTubers, that I want to try to copy their manner of speaking because I think it'll help me to make this point. And also, if you pay attention to my videos, so there have been some accusations of the idea that I start a video in a more feminine voice, but then I end up drifting more masculine as it goes. If you actually watch all of my videos, that always happens. Almost every video, I start off in a way higher pitch than I end up. It's just because when I start recording, I have lots of energy and excitement, and I want to be yeah, I'm happy-go-lucky, I'm ready to do it. But as I go, I fall naturally into what is my temperament, I am not necessarily a super excitable person, especially in the context of sitting by myself recording a fucking audio log. It would be different if I were if I were doing something that, sorry, I'm I keep stopping myself because I realize I don't know what I'm doing in this game, and having to stop and think and just be what the fuck am I doing? So, I've been talking in circles trying to answer this question for a while, but what I'm trying to get at is that it's it's not as though I did not suffer dysmorphia. I massively did, particularly when I was, when I went through puberty. But I found comfort in the realization that there was a person I could be that people would be happy with. It's like, I went from thinking like nobody will ever find me cool or attractive because like I look like shit and I'm not who I want to be, and I just don't care about my appearance because like, if I can't be a cute girl, then what the hell is the point of giving a shit, And like, people on the internet who like think my aesthetic is cool, like, that was something I developed on the internet. Like that whole aesthetic, I developed that as Digi Bro. I didn't look that way before. It's like, I originally was just wearing like pajama pants and fucking like, sweatpants and just like stuff that is like what you wear when you don't care about your aesthetic, and like it wasn't cool the way it eventually became. Like I learned like what shirts look good on you, what pajama pants look good, how do clothes match, how do I make my hair look decent, how do I like, those kind of things I figured out before I started YouTube. So like my ability to look cool was out of me like taking the shitty aesthetic that I already have and just going like, okay, well like if this is how I'm gonna dress, if this is how I'm gonna be, I don't have to look like shit. Like I don't have to I don't have to be like repulsive just because I don't like the way I look, So it's like, rather than look at it as like, oh, I'm so miserable because I don't look like a little girl, it's like, well, like at least people think I look cool, like at least there are some people who are attracted to me, at least like, at least I think I look cool in the mirror if I wear, if I wear these clothes in a way where they're actually fashionable, where it's making a fashion statement, as opposed to the lack of, or like even just that the lack of is the statement in and of itself, or the idea that looking cool doesn't mean looking cool in a prescribed way that other people have already looked cool. You can look cool on your own terms, and so it's like, yes, I think that I was in sincerity doing the thing that people admired me for, but it was bred from necessity, I connect with anime very strongly in the fact that, anime as a medium is inherently full of cheapness and shortcuts because it's bred out of the desire to make something that you do not have the means to make. Tezuka, as a fan of Disney, looks at Disney movies and says, these are beautiful and perfect, but I can't make that. I don't have the money. I don't have the people, I don't have the skill or time to make a feature-length animation on ones, but what I can do is grind out a TV show, 20 minutes of TV once a week, where we reuse half the footage and there's only 4 frames of animation, and it's like, it's not the best that it could have been, but it gets to exist, and that's what I love about anime, is that like these things wouldn't exist. They don't have the audience to exist. They could not exist in the highest form that they could, and like that is part of the appeal. Anime is malformed. Anime is it is what's the word I'm looking for? I guess malformed is the word I was looking for. Anime is, it's inherently for people who are on the fringes. Like it can't almost have a mainstream sensibility because it is pointless, and it exists to express things that don't occur naturally in nature, or that that nobody would care enough about to put the budget behind to do something serious with it. So it's just like, for me, as a human being, it's like I did not have the resources to be attractive, like the bodily resources, in my own opinion. But I could like formulate a way that it could be acceptable, you know? And like, so the question is then, like, how dishonest was it really, right? Like, I was true to my intentions in the sense that I was doing what I thought I wanted to do. I was not true to my intentions in the sense that I was wrong about what I wanted to do. And I was wrong because of misunderstandings about myself that were bred through all these different layers of compounding, like, confusion and denial and, like, desire to not have been wrong about something I said at some point in my life, you know? It's kind of like, okay, the best metaphor I could give you is I said in the first part how I hated girls when I was a kid. Like, I wanted nothing to do with them. Well, once I was, like, 13, I started to be attracted to girls. And by the time I was 14, I wanted to be a girl. But I still would not, like, admit to my parents or my brothers that I liked girls. Like, I would not say that. I wouldn't admit it. And, like, even after the point where I had, like, put up all these anime posters in my room, like, I remember a time where my parents, like, said, like, I heard them say something about, like, whether they were weirded out by, like, all the anime girls, and they were just kind of like, well, at least we know he's actually, like, into girls at all, like, because I had, you know, for so long denied it. But even after that, I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't talk about any feelings I had or ask for any advice about girls or anything like that. I just wouldn't talk about girls to my parents because, like, I, you know, didn't want to renege on everything I had said about myself. Like, I didn't want to like, say, oh, I was wrong and I didn't understand myself. You know, like, I was more willing to literally lie about myself than I was to admit that I had been wrong, you know? And you see how far that got me. So like, to me, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a difference between being comfortable or like being okay with your body and comfortable with your body and being happy with your body. And I don't think most people are happy with their bodies. I think most people are suffering some form of dysmorphia, and that's like half of all marketing is towards that fact. It's like, whatever dissatisfaction you have, you know, it kind of starts in the body. And I think that most of us are very disconnected from our bodies because of the way that our society is. I'm not going to get into, like, a whole rant about health and shit. That can wait for another time. But, like, you know, the general mental and physical health of people, especially in America, is dog shit. And a lot of that just comes from having no understanding of, like, what would be healthy for your mind or body. And also a lot of denial about what would be healthy for your mind or body. And that kind of brings us back to this. So I'm going to continue reading the Janine Garofalo comments so I can answer some more parts of it. So they said, there's also attraction. I do not find men attractive in the slightest. Only women who look like what you would expect a woman to look like are attractive. As a result, I do not find myself attractive. But I sometimes do have a line of thought that goes to, well, I want to be attractive. Since what I consider attractive is women, I also want to be a woman. But does that make me trans, or is that just a train of thought to be expected from any self-reflective straight human? But at that point, what even is the metric for determining whether one should be trans or not? Since gender stereotypes seem based around what the opposite gender finds attractive, should your own transness even qualify? So this is a really fascinating question. I try not to answer questions in a way where I say things like, you're talking an awful lot like a trans person here, but that's kind of how I feel about it. But, like, I mean, I connect with this because a big part of my confusion about my gender was the fact that I am attracted to women. That I, even at a time where I thought, like, when I first started going through gender confusion, I thought I might be bisexual. And actually, currently, I think I'm probably closer to feeling that way as well. But, like, what I'm attracted to in men is their sensitivity. I'm attracted to, you know, men that look like women. I'm not attracted to masculinity as an appearance, you know. It's really interesting because I've been watching, as I mentioned in the last video, Stop Hibari-kun, which is an anime from 1983 about a trans girl who is super sweet, who I'm absolutely, I love her and I want to be her. Hibari is my idol. And, but Hibari is into men. And what she is into about men is very traditionally masculine traits. And the author of Stop Hibari-kun, in their interview with Toko Toko, says that all of their drawings are born out of their frustration out of not having been born female. That is like the key energy behind all the art is, I wish I was a girl. Mega relatable. And like through that, like even before I knew that, my impression of the way that big burly men and yakuza are portrayed in the series is like, this is what the manga author is into. Like, he sees himself as a girl. I guess she sees herself as a girl, but you know, not, the manga author is not an out trans person or anything like that. But you know, I don't know what is considered most respectful in this case. Japan has different pronouns anyways. So in any case, this person, they you know, my read on the show is that they were into big, buff, burly dudes. Like, that they are into bears, you know? And I'm not. I'm into girls. And that made it even more confusing for me, because there's this sense of longing that I feel towards women, where it's a combination of, like, the desire to have sex and also the desire to become, you know? And, like, it took me a really long time to parse the difference, to be able to tell, like, what am I attracted to versus what do I want to be. And at this point, I feel like they're almost completely separate. And it's also helped. This is something that somebody else in another comment said. I don't remember if it was this one, but somebody talked about their how, like, they were just attracted to, like, every woman they saw. And eventually they realized that it was this kind of disconnect of, like, oh, I thought I was attracted to every single woman. Then I realized that it was just my desire to be a woman. And, like, once I, you know, recognize that, then it's like I can kind of separate it better. And that's how I feel as well. Where it's like, for a long time, I thought I literally was just like, any woman is fine. Like, you know, but it's more that, like, my admiration for just the female form and, like, wishing to have that for myself. And it's like, when I imagine, like, when I think in terms of, like, okay, what would I be attracted to if I already was a girl? You know, like, if I didn't have to think about the fact that I am not one, if I wasn't projecting, basically. And even during sex, there's an element of this where it's like, I think a lot of the times I might fuck the way I wish I was getting fucked, or I might, you know, like, be like, want to touch parts of a woman's body that are parts that I wish were being touched on myself. You know, it's like, oh, if I grab this breast, then I know what a breast feels like, you know, and like, that's what I wish it felt like, you know, on myself. And as long as I can make those distinctions, it's easier for me to, like, tell the difference between, like, what are you projecting and what are you looking for, you know? And once those things are parsed, then it's like I have a better understanding of what I'm actively attracted to, you know? Like, this person saying that they want to be attractive and therefore they want to be like the thing that they find attractive. I don't think that's how men usually think. I think men's mentality is usually, I want to be whatever the other gender will find attractive. Like, I really think that for a lot of men, life is not about, like, finding yourself. It's about finding the person who you can be in order to get what you want, you know? Which I guess is really bringing me back to what I was already saying about the dysmorphia, that, like, what allowed me to connect with my own maleness was that sensation of, like, oh, it doesn't matter what I am. It only matters, like, what hole I can fill. To use a broad metaphor with lots of fun applications. So To read the next part of their question, how much of your identity is based on stuff you think most people would also identify as if they gave things as much thought as you did? Is any of your identity based on sexual attraction to femininity, and thus something you wish to portray yourself for a better self-image? I mean, by the way you put things, it feels as though the implication is anyone that consumes media would be better off with a feminine perspective, and it's one that is ultimately superior. That's an interesting way of putting it. I don't think a feminine perspective is superior. In fact, I think that being able to get shit done and not think about stuff is actually the better way to live. Like, I think that there's a limit to how much thinking is actually beneficial to anybody, and like what things are worth thinking about for everybody. You know, it's like if everyone on Earth was always just thinking about shit and not doing shit, nothing would get done. So it's like, in a way, you know, there don't need to be a lot of people thinking about stuff. It should just be the people to whom that is comfortable and natural. Like, you know, I really look at my existence as like I'm simultaneously lucky that I have like the space to think about stuff and just come up with ideas, but like I also think that it's just my comfort zone and it's what I want to do. Most people are not comfortable being left with their thoughts. You know, I call myself the void gazer for a reason, because most people cannot handle void gazing. And like, you know, I'm somebody who actively goes looking for Cthulhu rather than accidentally stumbling upon him, you know, if that makes sense. So, do I think that there's a lot of things about my identity that other people would feel about themselves if they thought about them? Yes. In fact, I think that's happening to a lot of people who are watching my content. And it's kind of not surprising, because I think that it would probably be somewhat difficult for you to connect with most of my content if you had never experienced anything pretty similar to myself. I mean, for what it's worth, this is the internet, right? Like, if you're on the internet, it probably means that you needed something that you couldn't get from your offline connections here. There's some kind of understanding that wasn't shared with you, or, you know, just you couldn't find people who connected with the stuff you cared about. So you came to the internet to look for that. And if you found me, it means that you found somebody who connected with your way of thinking in a lot of different, you know, facets. And like, there are some people who really just come to me because I say interesting things about anime, and like they don't necessarily connect with me. They just connect with like, oh, it's interesting to hear a perspective that's not mine. But like, your ability to understand me at all requires you to be like more, you know, closer to my camp than away from it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So like, the idea that my audience would be like leaden with closeted trans people is not exactly a surprise when I'm a closeted trans person. So, you know, I guess I'm sorry for what I'm doing to so many people, but I've always wanted to be the internet's biggest causer of mass awakenings. So I'll read the last part of this guy's question, or a person's question. Would you consider your own choices to come out as antithetical to the cause of removing gender from the human lexicon and do more harm than good? Do you find it even okay to question such a thing? Like, are you okay with people critiquing and hating on your voice, and are willing to acknowledge it's a perspective removed from coming out, contrary to how many of your other supporters seem to present it in their own responses? So this is, this is something really important to me to talk about. I mean, I already talked about my voice and like how, you know, it's not in a static state anyways, but like, why do I need to present feminine? Why do I need to, you know, to change my voice, even though I know that it will bother people? And like, to some extent, I understand complaining about the voice, because I am offering you product here. Like these videos, these are product. They are something for you to consume, and, you know, possibly to contribute money to me for doing, right? And especially if you're paying money for it, like, it's understandable that you want it to be the way that you want it to be. You know, if the new voice literally makes the content unlistenable and like you don't want to hear it, then that's completely reasonable. Like, I wouldn't expect you to just be down to listen to something that you find annoying just because, like, it, you know, it makes me feel better about myself. But that doesn't mean I would change anything for anybody. You know, it's like, I'm gonna do the voices that make me comfortable. And you know, I'm in a difficult position right now of, like, my job involves my voice. I can't just sit back and experiment for months until I have, you know, I mean, I can, but, like, it would be very difficult to do my job. So it's like, you know, I'm looking for a voice I'm comfortable with, and hopefully in the end it will be one that people think, or even more hopefully at each step of the way, it'll be something you find listenable. I just don't want people are just fucking douchebags about it. That's what bothers me more than anything. It's like, I don't mind that you don't like the voice, but the level of entitlement people feel towards my old voice, that's what drives me insane. That, like, you know, I understand if you're going to, if you think, oh, I'm going to miss the voice. It's like, well, the voice it hasn't gone anywhere. Like, it didn't die. I didn't literally fucking, I will literally always be able to do whatever voice I have ever done. Like, I can do them. I just don't choose to, you know, because I'm not as comfortable. Maybe, you know, maybe I'll find a voice that I'm comfortable with that you'll also enjoy, but, like, it's a process. I hope you'll stick with me through it. If you can't, whatever. But, like, you know, again, I don't begrudge anybody not wanting to watch my content because of my voice. Just don't tell me. I don't need to hear it. I don't care. Like, I understand the complaint, but it's not going to change the way I operate, because I'm operating to try to achieve personal comfort, you know? And, even if I burned away my whole audience in the process of trying to achieve personal comfort, it would be worth it to not be miserable, to not be uncomfortable, you know? And as I've said in my song, Off My Drip, I could be a ratchet hoe, or I could be in style, I could be anything but fine with denial. And I'm not going to deny my own feelings of dysphoria towards my own voice, you know, like towards, like, even listening to, like, right now it may not sound like I'm doing an especially effeminate voice, but if you were to compare this to, like, videos before my transition, you know, I'm speaking from a higher part of my throat, basically. Like, it's definitely more effeminate in certain ways, and I guess some people consider it a stereotypical gay voice, which is just because gay people tend to talk from a higher place in their throat. I mean, you can look into a lot of, like, voice theory and shit about, like, why people talk the way they do. But again, voices are always a habit at the end of the day. You can break the habit or change the habit. And for me, it's breaking the habit of controlling the voice, breaking the habit of trying to sound like a radio presenter all the time and always be clear and always be, like, well-spoken, and instead going more in the direction of, like, you know, talking in the way that best represents the emotions I'm trying to convey. And, like, if you listen to, like, Digi Bros or Me Talk to May, you get a much better sense of what I really talk like. Because, like, IRL, I talk half in fucking song references. Like, I constantly am referencing songs or lyrics and just, like, or remixing lyrics or making jokes about lyrics. It's like, if you listen to me talk in real life, it doesn't sound like a podcast, because I'm not tasking myself to speak unbroken about things for hours on end. But, you know, what would be the most appropriate voice for doing that? It's not a sing-song voice per se, you know, but there is more expressive ways of speaking than the cadence that I lock myself into when I'm trying to be, like, ultra clear and trying to be a, like, analytical personality or whatever. So yeah, like, I don't mind so much people critiquing the voice. Do I think that it's okay? Like, do I think that me coming out is problematic in that it does not help to remove gender from the lexicon? Here's, I guess I'll go into the real reason that I see the need to come out, right? Like, I'm going to do HRT. I'm going to start dressing like a woman. I'm going to, you know, grow breasts and fucking, like, not be recognizably male anymore. So, like, let's talk again about gender realism, because I brought up in the last episode that, like, being trans involves some level of, like, admittance, I guess, that there are stereotypes about the genders, and those stereotypes don't come out of nowhere. There are legitimately tendencies that the fucking, what's the word I'm looking for, the hormones that you have inside of you cause to, like, you know, like, if you have more testosterone, you are more competitive, more headstrong, more aggressive, and if you have more estrogen, you will be more emotional and more bitch mode, you know? And, like, there are men with higher levels of I think I probably have more estrogen than most men. I think I'm, like, I don't know, I'm not going to say that I'm, like, borderline intersex or something like that, but I have a lot of, like, very distinctly feminine traits that most men don't. There's a reason I was mistaken for a girl so much throughout my life. And even now, like, keep saying mistaken, but it's like, that's one of the things about the trans experience, is that it's like there was a part in a Vic and Hope where Victor was saying, like, well, I'm not going to call Digi, I'm going to refer to Digi as a he when I'm talking about the past, because he was a guy at the time. And it's like, well, I wasn't, you know, I felt the same way. Like, I still felt like I was, you know, different from what I was presenting. I just wasn't calling myself a woman, you know? So it's like, I think I always was a woman. It's not as though I, you know, this is so fucking confusing to try to phrase, because it's like, how can you say things like these, right? Well, you know, I do think that there is legitimately, like, a difference between a man and a woman, that some men and women happen to be closer to the center, and some of them feel uncomfortable with the fact that they are not further to one side or the other, and feel as though making that transition will help them to be closer to what they think they want to be, right? So I've known people who detransitioned, and the reasoning being that, like, the estrogen did not make them feel right. Like, they thought they were going to, you know, to feel more themselves by having that different, you know, by having that different biology, I guess. And they came away feeling less like themselves, you know, or feeling like they didn't truly grasp what it was going to mean. And once they did, they felt differently, you know. For me, I think that it was the realization of those, like, that gender realism, once again, that made me realize, like, I would be happier as a woman, that, like, I would probably be happier with less testosterone and more estrogen, because the things that I like and value about myself and the things that I dislike about myself are heavily tied to my masculine and feminine traits, you know, like, I'm not competitive. Like, by nature, I'm not competitive at all. I'm not very aggressive, and, like, trying to be those things for the sake of being, like, a dude is not enjoyable for me. Like, when other people, okay, like, you guys are probably Procrastinators fans, right? You know the Procrastinators races that we do, where we play a video game and we try to see who can, like, win the race, right? Like, I've never even tried in one of those. Like, everybody else is legitimately trying to win. I am trying to play a game and have fun because I don't understand what I'm supposed to get out of winning. It's like, why would I care? Like, you know, like, isn't the point of this just to see who's, like, the best just from, I don't know, the skills they've developed from playing the game? Like, why is it, like, we're literally studying and practicing to win, you know? Like, that competitiveness, like, never just made sense to me. And the times I do feel things like it, I'm not happy about it. You know, it's like I don't feel comfortable being put into those kinds of traditionally masculine positions because I don't relate to them. And it's like, I wouldn't be put into those positions if people weren't looking at me as a guy, you know? And granted, not everybody harbors like stereotypes about men and women. Some people will not make these kinds of assumptions, but it's just like, I myself have tasked myself to be like more of a guy because of the fact that that's the way I'm presenting, and that's like what makes sense to be, you know, if you're going to be a guy. And, you know, I want to be distant from that. I want to get away from that. So, rereading again the comment to make sure I know what the fuck I'm responding to still. Yeah, it's just like, I guess I realized that, and maybe this will all turn out to be, maybe I'll turn out to be wrong about this, like maybe I'll get on the estrogen and feel worse about myself, but like, in the time since I've come out, I have been acting as my idea of a woman. Like, what traits I felt I was ignoring about myself, I have been letting out, and what traits I felt I was only doing to be more masculine, I have been tempering, and I've been way happier. And, you know, that happiness comes as a result of being more emotional and more out and open and like crying all the fucking time. Like, I used to be somebody who literally like struggled to cry, and like I took note of it every time I did. There's literally blog posts where I've listed every time anime made me cry, because like I thought it was like such an important and fascinating thing to like study. Like, why can't I cry? Why is it so difficult for me to have like these open emotional experiences the ways that others do? And it's like, it's because you are, when your way of dealing with life is to suppress your emotions, then you cannot have, you know, open emotional experiences, because you're not being yourself in those moments. You cannot, you know, you can't engage as you when you're not being you. So, like, you know, I look at the fact that I'm, like, crying all the time and being, like, super emotional as, like, it feels good. It feels good to get to cry. It feels good to get to be emotional and to get to, you know, to really make my feelings clear. And, like, you know, even if it takes emotionally exploding, it's like, even if it takes me like not being able to explain something until the point where I'm like losing my mind, and then finally it just all comes out in like a big tearful explosion, I'm just so happy it comes out, you know, as opposed to staying down. And I think that a lot of trans people are a lot more forwardly emotional than I am, and that's what kind of allows them to come out younger. Like, I really think that it's rare that somebody is in a position where they feel as alienated for as many reasons as I do, where like the transness is not the only reason I felt alienated. It's like the total distrust and feeling like the world is not correct, and like everybody's out to get me, and like nobody understands me. And like when you're on that level, then it's no longer about like I guess the way I'd put it is that there are, like, when I watch, for instance, again, Stop Hibari-kun, right? Like, Hibari-kun is an extremely emotional person who is outwardly trans. Like, their family just has to deal with it. It's like, Hibari is not willing to repress. She's not willing to, you know, to act like a boy just because her dad wants her to. And when she's at school, she just doesn't even she doesn't say, oh, I'm biologically male. It's like she presents as female and lives her life that way and is successful because of the fact that she is true to herself and is a good person with good morals. And so people like her. She's attractive, she's cool, she's just, beloved by the community. And the only thing that people, that anybody has a problem with is her family, who has a problem with the fact that she's biologically male and acting as a woman, even though they all love the way she acts as a woman. It's just the fact. It's just the fact that she's, biologically male is the only problem And it's not even really a big deal because of the fact that Hibari completely gets away with it, and her family are pushovers, you know, who cannot actually stop her from acting the way that she wants to act. So it's like, oh, this fucking failed. It's like, because of all that, when I look at her, I see like, okay, like I had an opportunity to be like this, but the way I lived my life is that I trusted nobody and wasn't open at all, you know? And so like, and it's not just about like the, you know, the gender thing, but just like in any way, just like this refusal to open up to people and like acknowledge them on their own terms because of the fact that I'm so mad that they don't seem to understand me, that like I don't want to engage with them because I think they're assholes. You know, I think everybody's an asshole. So like, why would I want to be friends with all these assholes, you know? And then you realize that, okay, well, I'm not making any friends. So like, is there just nobody who's not an asshole, or am I the asshole? You know, I've lost track of what I was trying to say. I've been going around in fucking circles. I was answering this question for like an hour. So we're going to move on to some other questions here. All right. Let's see. We've got from Armin Yagsi. You once said, my rationalization of my own maleness may not be the same as the next person's, but it's a sensation I recognize myself, that I recognize as myself being male in my 8 Nights of Kara no Kyokai Part 2 video. I'm not quoting this to prove anything, I'm just interested in what your mindset was back then, as I think I relate to you a lot, both in that video and this video. So, I saw it as, I guess, a great way to put it with Kara no Kyokai is that I saw myself as Mikia, who is obsessed with Shiki. Now I see myself as Shiki. And this actually leads me perfectly into something I was going to say in response to that last question and kept forgetting. So, we're going to get real deep here. We're going to talk about some stuff I've never really talked about and really get like the deepest part of my psyche that allowed me to sort of bridge this gap into coming out. Ever since I went through puberty and became depressed about my body, I developed something akin to a dissociative identity. Where I think that because of the fact that I so, like, could not be myself in my body, I compartmentalized my quote-unquote true self into, like, a secondary personality within myself, whereas there's, like, also the front-facing one. So, like, we'll call the front-facing personality Digibro and the inner personality Conrad, right? Well, the inner personality is functionally nearly identical to the outer one. The only difference is that the inner personality has certain thoughts and feelings that are, you know, that the outer personality really cannot address or cannot describe to other people, you know? And I think we all have this, you know, everybody has a face that they hold inside, a face that awakes when I close my eyes, a face that watches every time they lie, a face that laughs every time they fall in, watches everything, you know, as Linkin Park would say. But, like, like, be that as it may, the inner voice, rarely had any need to be seen as different from the outer one, because, like, it's just, you know, it's just my inner monologue, right? But sometimes there would be moments where I had to, like, kind of talk to myself, like, to really represent these two personalities as two separate entities that are having a conversation. And it's not often, but, like, particularly when I'm feeling, like, very dysphoric, that will be when, you know, it's like I cannot, you know, figure out what's going on inside my mind if I interpret it as just myself alone in here, you know. However, every time that I ever attempted to, like, like figure out, like navigate, is this another personality? Like, do I have multiple personalities? Do I have a dissociated identity? Every time I would try to navigate that, I would come to the conclusion that this other personality is me. It knows all the same things I know. There is no way for me to have something in my brain that isn't me. If it's in my brain, it is me. You know, if these thoughts are occurring, it's because these thoughts are possible within my mind. And so, you know, in recognition of that idea, that fact, it's like, okay, well, every time I would like try to talk to myself or something like that, I would come to the conclusion that like it's pointless because it's just me. Like, it's pointless to talk to this other voice because it is just me, you know? And so the question became like, why is there this disconnect? Why is there this disassociation? And like, this became really palpable for me after making the neurotyping chart, because when I made it, I was in a position where I had been trying to be very logical and lexical for a while. Like, that had been my tack. And it was almost like I'd convinced myself that that was real somehow, which doesn't make any sense when I think about my past. But it does make sense when I think about the fact that I took medication for a while. So back in 2010, I had been feeling suicidally depressed since I was 14. It had been going on for so long that I didn't even necessarily associate it with gender dysphoria, just because, like, I mean, I was just depressed about fucking everything. You know, it was just general anxiety. So, like, and that's more or less what I was diagnosed with, was, like, you know, just general anxiety, depression, possible ADHD, and I was given bupropion, or Wellbutrin, which is a, you know, psychoactive drug that is supposed to fucking help you. Now, here's the thing about psychology and about psychoactive drugs. There is no such thing as a mental illness or a mental cure. There is only the state you're in and the state you want to be. If somebody tells you that you have schizophrenia, what that means is that you don't fit in to society because of the way you think. Now, the way you could think that exact same way and find a way to fit into society if there is a role that you can fill with the way that you think. And most people are capable of finding a role they can fill. And anytime you talk to somebody and you realize that they're fucking insane, and you're like, how are you functioning in society? Like, how do you even fucking live? How have you not been locked up in a fucking loony bin or by the police? It's because they have found a way to live in spite of the fact that they're fucking insane. And, you know, you only get diagnosed with something, and it's called a disorder, if it is causing disorder, if you cannot live because of the way you think. So, you know, at the time, I thought, I cannot move past the way that I am. Like, I can't figure out what's wrong with me, what I need to change. Like, I've read all these self-help books, I understand the concepts, but I need actual direction, you know? And really, it was just the lack of ever having spoken to somebody who really understood what the fuck I was talking about. So when I saw a psychologist, like, even though he didn't really tell me anything I didn't know, it was the fact that he understood what I was talking about that made it interesting for me and made it worth doing. And, like, when it got to a point where that was no longer the case, I stopped. But, like, you know, I was medicated because, in my mind, it's like, okay, well, I already know all the answers to, like, what you're supposed to do, but I don't really understand how to do those things, so I need medication, right? And the medication, in a strange way, taught me what I had to do. Because what the medication allowed me to do was numb my emotions and just, like, not really give a shit. It's like, where my anxieties had come from would be, like, let's say that I had homework to do, and what I wanted to do was watch anime. I would guilt myself over not doing the homework and therefore not watch anime. But it wouldn't cause me to then do the homework. Like, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I really struggle to bring myself to do something that I don't understand the purpose of, or that, like, I don't see a personal benefit to. Like, forcing myself to do shit is... I'm just not good at it, you know, like, no amount of punishment of myself, no amount of you can't do this or that until you're done will cause me to do it. I will just do nothing. I will literally sit and wallow and do nothing and be a crybaby, you know, rather than do the thing I have to do if I truly don't want to do it. And it's recognizing that in myself that made me realize I could not do any regular job that requires discipline. I need to do some kind of shitty creative job where I can be an asshole and live my life however I want. Except that that's not really what I want, because the type of lifestyle that I want to live is one where I'm constantly helping people emotionally. And, like, ultimately, I've come to realize that I just want to be a mom. That's really what this is all about, is, like, at the core, that's, like, what I really want. You know, I'm framing myself as AniTube's One-san right now, but eventually I'll have to become AniTube's mother. We'll wait till that day comes, though. In any case, so, like, what did I mean? I realize I haven't answered this question in any way, I don't think. I guess, like, what I mean to say when I said that I was, you know, identifying the way I was behaving as a male is that for a very long time, my mindset was, like, it literally doesn't matter who I am or what I do. I just need a woman I can attach myself to. Like, you know, as long as I can find a woman that I care about who's interesting and cool and, like, you know, who I'm in love with, I'll just be whoever I need to be for that woman, you know? And that's kind of how Mikia is towards Shiki. It's like he's just obsessed with her and he'll just do whatever to be, you know, whatever he has to be that will benefit her, you know? And, like, I think that's the mindset you develop when you just don't care about yourself, when, like, you don't feel as though you have any meaning as a human being. And that's how I feel as a man as opposed to as a woman, where it's like I project that does, like, that feeling that way, feeling like, oh, I am nothing, I need a woman to be something for me. Well, you end up choosing a woman who is you, right? Like, if you feel comfortable completely sublimating yourself to somebody else, it has to be that they are close enough to who you already are that you would think you would feel comfortable, like, with, you know, with just letting them make all the decisions, with letting them pilot your life, essentially. And I thought that, like, oh, I'm nothing, so I need a woman who can be something for me. And yet the women that I was attracted to, the women I was, you know, that I was looking for, are ones who remind me of myself, because I'm really looking for a woman who is the person I wish I was, and then I can just allow them to be. And the funny thing about me and May is that we're kind of both like that. I think that both of us basically projected what we wanted, like, what we saw in one another is that was who we wanted to be. And we projected the desires we had for ourselves onto each other. So it's like I, you know, based on who I want to be, I might encourage May to do things that are like things that I really want to do. Like, for instance, playing Animal Crossing, right? Like, I was like, oh, I love Animal Crossing and I've always wanted to play the GameCube game, but, like, I have to work. I have to do my job and be the provider. I'm the man of the house. I have to, you know, I don't have time to sit around and play these frivolous, girly games. However, you know, May, who's into a lot of the same stuff I do and, you know, considers herself more gender fluid, she identifies as a demi-boy, which basically means that every once in a while you feel like a man, but for the most part feel like a woman. And, you know, it's like, because of the fact that she is capable of having those feminine thoughts or interests, then it's like, oh, I don't have to have them. I can let you have them. Like, I don't have to get into fashion. I can help you pick out clothes, you know? But, like, even though I love May's style, she doesn't dress the way I would dress. Like, not every outfit that I think is cool and suggest to her is going to be something that she's going to buy and wear. You know, it's like, if I really want to wear these things, I need to wear them for myself. I need to be the one who can, and it's like, you know, why can't that be the case? Like, why couldn't it be that? And it's like, I think that we both were like afraid of becoming the person that we really wanted to be, and it was easier to have the other person do the things that like we think need to be done, you know? So like, and then now we've kind of reversed that, where like we're slowly moving in the direction of being more actually like the other person, where like the things that, you know, that I would encourage May to do, or that she would encourage me to do, we've been starting to just do ourselves, and like realize that, oh, I actually like doing this thing, and I wish I had been the one doing it all along, you know? Like, for instance, May is now taking care of the lawn, because, as she put it, like, she had just never considered the idea that, like, the guy wouldn't do that, because she has, you know, even though she's an eldest sister, she has a younger brother who's a very, like, big dude, and he's, you know, strong, and she has a dad who's also a big dude who's strong, so it's like, there was never any chance they were going to get her to do the yard, because there's two big, strong men who can do it. Which is really funny, because in my household, that was always the argument, was like, my dad could not understand why he has these 3 strong boys and he cannot get the yard cut. And it's like, I fucking just hate mowing the lawn. I hate it on so many levels. I hate watching insects run away from me. I hate the feeling of, like, that I'm just, like, destroying a habitat, essentially. I hate the noise. I hate, you know, I'm just like, I'm not into it. And I don't care about how the yard looks. Like, to me, it is no less beautiful for the yard to be overgrown than it is for it to be manicured. It's just like, I don't see why this is preferable to, you know, it being the way that it naturally is. And so, like, May, who does care about the yard looking nice, you know, like, would continually, you know, have to, like, basically, like, convince me to actually go and you know, to actually go and mow the lawn, until she realized, like, wait, like, is there any reason I can't do this? Like, as soon as I came out, she was like, why do I need you to mow the yard? Like, well, if you're not the man in this relationship, then, you know, then what is stopping me, you know? And so she started doing it, because, like, taking care of the yard can be fun. Like, if you set goals, if you have things you want out of it, you know, then it doesn't have to be something that sucks, but it sucks for me, you know? And meanwhile, I on the other hand, have taken up doing the dishes, because the only problem I really have with doing the dishes is that it takes up time, again, that, like, I'm supposed to be the provider who works, and so, like, oh, my time is best spent making money, so, you know, I don't want to bother doing the dishes. And, like, before we started dating, I was just using all paper utensils and plastic. You know, she didn't want to do that. She wanted to use real bowls and plates and stuff, because she was cooking real food. And so she took the responsibility on herself to do the dishes, because, like, you know, oh, well, I'm cooking, I'm the one who wants to use these dishes, like, I'm, you know, I'm not the breadwinner, so this is, like, a thing I can do. But now that we're trying to move in a direction where we're both making money, where we're both taking on different responsibilities around the house, where, like, neither one of us is the guy and the other one's the girl, you know, it's like we both have our roles, and I like doing the dishes. I don't mind it. You know, it's the opposite of how I feel about mowing the lawn, where it's like, yeah, doing the dishes, whatever, just like an average chore, can do it, you know, as long as I know that that's what I have to do, as long as I know, like, that's my role, that's something that is dedicated to me, and it's not more important than doing my work necessarily. You know, it's not automatically, you know, it's not automatically my place to always be you know, the person who's solely dedicated to trying to make money, you know. Anyway, I feel like I've talked about this more than enough. So, next question was from August Prower, who says, "Hey Digi, I really appreciate a lot of the stuff you said in this video, though for now I'm just going to get down on the what my audience wants from me bit. Honestly, I think the #1 way to describe the things I've been yearning for from your channel as of late is just any kind of script, any kind of editing, but there should be some of both. I really enjoyed the 2 videos, Otagonzo tapes episodes for this exact reason." It's actually 3, buddy. "Once you have the script in front of you and some style to your video, the things you say and the way you present them become inherently interesting. To me, and I'd imagine most of your audience, though, I think unscripted content has its place. This is a pretty good video, for instance. It feels like the more recent output on your channel has drifted away from this kind of content into tons of podcasts, vlogs, etc., where you get out your ideas in the shortest amount of time, but also with what I find to be the least amount of value, which hence has led to a lot of videos where it feels like you have to continuously repeat the ideas you're trying to convey because each previous attempt was too off the cuff." So, it's interesting you say that, because usually my scripted videos start off as something I've said off the cuff a few times, and they become scripted once I've figured out the best way to put it. Because, like, you know, my ideas, as I described in the last video, they start off as these far-off, impressionistic things in the distance that slowly grow closer and closer until it has fully formed. And so, like, oh my god, these things are so fucking annoying. Like, if let's say, like, the Bathos videos, right? So, like, I made this vlog about Bathos that's just this long, winding rant, and a lot of people love that video because it really, truly makes the point about Bathos the best you possibly could, but I later retooled that into, like, a 5-minute scripted video. And, this is one of the few cases where most people preferred the non-written version to the written version. I apologize for sucking so much shit at the Forbidden Fortress, by the way. I've always sucked at this segment. They made it way easier in the Wind Waker HD, which is a big part of why I like that version more, but, you know, it is what it is. I guess the way I look at it is that I have too many ideas for them to each be fully realized. And picking and choosing which ones should be fully realized is always very complicated and difficult because everybody has different things that they, you know, think would be most interesting. I have different things I think would be most interesting. And, like, you know, whether or not a scripted video even can exist largely depends on, you know, whether or not I am capable of having the idea and, like, following through, you know, to write it. But there's tons of ideas that I don't have that level of, you know, that level of thought about. And, like, honestly, this is something I feel about musicians, right? That a lot of musicians, their early work is their best because it's these song ideas that they've been holding on to forever. That, like, long before they learned how to play their instruments, long before they found, you know, a group of people to make a band with, they already had a bunch of ideas for songs, you know, and their excitement over learning how to play was probably out of a desire to make those songs real. Well, what happens when that artist writes all those songs and now they have to come up with new songs? And it's like, it could be that those older songs were things that were, you know, boiling away in their mind from the time that they were fucking children, whereas now they're coming up with stuff fresh off the top of their head and having to, you know, somehow make that as good as the other stuff that they had already been festering on, you know? So, like, with me as an anime guy, like, I worked through a lot of what I had to say in, like, broad general terms about anime. Like, there's another comment on here where somebody was saying, like, you know, I think what you do best is these sort of general analysis where you talk about anime in broad terms. It's like, well, yeah, I think so too. Those are also my most popular videos. I did them all. I did all the ones I had. Like, I can come up with new things to talk about, but it's like, somebody said something like, why not do a video, like, going in depth on, like, the appeal of mecha? Now, first of all, I already did that video. I did a vlog about the appeal of mecha, and I don't think there's much more to say about it, but it's like, if I don't already know what the appeal of mecha is, how am I going to find that out? Well, I'm going to have to watch every, you know, I'm just going to keep watching mecha until I feel like I get it. And it's like, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, like, you know, your stuff about general concepts is the most interesting, do more of it. And it's another thing to be like, okay, well, like, how? Like, do more of it how? Like, what are you expecting? You know, I cannot make up things to be true about anime in a general sense, you know? God fucking damn it! They have to be true. It has to be things that I can observe before I can make observations about them. And there's a limited number of broad observations about anime that I have made or can make, you know? And so, like, with the Otsuganzo tapes, I've been going kind of in the opposite direction of not so much looking at things in a broad lens, but extremely specific, but, like, extrapolating from that specific detail stuff that you can apply to other stuff in a broad sense, you know? So I think it preserves some of what people like about those more broad videos. Like, the Otsuganzo tapes are not so specific that you need to watch the show to understand what the tape, like, what I'm saying in that video. And that's what I think, you know, makes them a good way forward. But, like, again, you know, I wish I could just have broad concept things to say about anime all the time, but it's not so simple. So, like, in that sense, making all the podcasts and vlogs actually helps me to make scripted content, because it gets me talking about ideas, and then people respond to what I say, and it makes me think about it more, and then eventually I am ready, you know? And I've seen plenty of other content creators who kind of do something similar. Like, if you think about Ego Raptor and Game Grumps, right? How, like, there might, like, the idea for the Skyward Sword video that he eventually made, the sequelitis, actually it was about Ocarina of Time. Skyward Sword kept coming up. But his Ocarina of Time sequelitis is something he suggests is going to happen in the Link to the Past playthrough, because, you know, that's where, like, the idea started metastasizing, like, or not metastasizing, I always say that word. But the idea started materializing was, you know, when he was making that Let's Play, and it was causing him to think about those things. And then, like, you know, talking about the points he had in that Let's Play builds up to him eventually making a full analysis video, you know? So, like, if it seems like I'm doing more podcasts and more vlogs than before, it's because my ideas are newer. I'm no longer sitting on an idea that I've been thinking about for 5 years and finally getting a video out about it. I'm developing new ideas, you know, making vlogs, like, telling people, like, hey, here's something I've been thinking about. And I mean, that's what started my vlogs in the first place, was, like, the After Dark channel was a place for me to deposit ideas that I did not understand well enough to make a script about, you know? And that's why a lot of them eventually became scripts. So it's just like, I guess it's just you're seeing my creative process more so than before, because I have to show it to you in order to have content to come out, you know? And obviously the rate at which content is expected has increased over the years, both in a general sense and from myself. All right, moving on to more questions. I only have a few more that I have to get through. Some of these are not even about, you know, the things I've been talking about, or just general questions I thought would be nice to answer. So, for instance, how did you deal with being in the awkward phase of making a significant amount of money from your career online, but not quite enough to be able to support yourself financially? I've been in this situation a lot recently, and it's not something I can find very many people talking about. Honestly, for me, this was just a matter of sheer privilege, because my family really cares about me and was willing to take care of me for as long as it took for me to feel ready to leave. So basically, the first couple years of my career, when I was not making enough to sustain myself, I was living with my parents. Once I was making enough to sustain myself, I stopped living with my parents. If I ever stop making enough to sustain myself, I might go back to living with my parents. Who knows? But, you know, like, again, like, living at home was not difficult for me. It was, like, it obviously has difficulty. Nobody wants to live with their parents if they can help it, if they, like, unless they literally do everything with their parents, I guess. But, like, you know, in my case, it was just, like, there was no reason to leave because things were fine. And, you know, once I was able to, I did. So, yeah, just sheer luck, I guess, is what got me through that. I know that's not a helpful answer, but it's the truth, for me at least. I'm sure there are, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people who have who have been in your situation, and I mean, most of the friends I have who are in your situation just simply live broke and have continued to live broke. I feel very lucky that I did not have to live broke, at least not of my own, not because of my own fuck-ups. You know, I've lived broke before as a kid, but that was not the case when I started my career. My family was not broke, so it was easy to live at home. Ryan Anderson says, I have no friends. I frequently go days, if not weeks, without speaking words to other people, but I'm pretty great at public speaking. I have an estranged set of interests that is not very singular, and I've met no one who shares an interest in a majority of them. I realize I suffer from being alone, but I struggle to be in the relationships I have tried to foster. I just can't convince myself that it can be possible for someone to give a shit about me, and often me of them. How did you overcome that hurdle? So this is really difficult. Like, not hating yourself. Like, again, I really think it comes down to being able to recognize that you have something to offer and just being, like, proud of that fact. Like, for me, it's all about the feedback. Like, I need people to tell me, like, hey, what you did was cool, or like, hey, I like hearing you talk because it helps me, you know, to think about myself. And it's like, you know, hearing those things makes me think, okay, objectively, I have done something for somebody, you know, like, okay, maybe not objectively, you know, but it's like, I could, sometimes I sit back and I think, am I really having a positive influence on people? Like, is me activating a bunch of trans kids going to do them any good? Like, how many people have killed themselves because they tried my advice, it didn't work, and they thought there's nothing else that they could do in this world? Like, you know, I was their only lifeline and I failed. Like, I feel that way sometimes, but, you know, at the end of the day, I luckily have, you know, I have the receipts. I have people telling me that, like, what I'm doing is good. And because I am even more self-conscious than some, I choose to believe them because surely I am not smarter than them. See, this is the key. Because if people tell you that you're a good person and you don't believe them, well, what does that mean you're saying about them? Are you telling them that they're wrong? Are you telling people that they are literally wrong to like you? That they are wrong to think that you're okay? Are you telling them that they have bad judgment? You know, if you look at it this way, then you can say, well, you know, it's not my intention to suggest that you are wrong to think that I'm good. So I guess, yeah, I should just take your word for it. What would my dumbass know anyways, you know? Everyone should be treated as though they inherently have potential value. I think that, you know, whether or not you actually have value is something that really couldn't be determined unless, I mean, first of all, it can't be determined by any person. Like, nobody is going to be able to figure out whether you had value just by, like, looking at your whole life in sum total and, like, deciding whether it was more of a positive or negative, you know, net for the world. But, like, the only person who could do that would be God, you know, and proverbially that is supposed to be what he does in Christian mythology. Or I guess Santa Claus can do the same. But, you know, in the absence of God or Santa Claus to judge your actions, the best you can do is listen to people. And if people generally think that you are an idiot asshole, and you think that they are right, then you should probably figure out how to not be one anymore by asking them. Like, ask what they think you should do, and don't just take everybody's advice at face value, but, like, work with people, figure out a way that you can both be comfortable. Like, you know, like what this whole series is about. Anyway. Lick Tasty says, not that it's any of my business whatsoever, but I dimly recall a video in which you mentioned that you had issues with self-esteem as a child, and then as you aged, you sort of grew into being who you were and embraced your self-image. Can I ask what changed for you, and am I remembering incorrectly? I have a friend that transitioned seemingly out of nowhere. For context, we lived next door since our childhood and would hang out nearly every day until she moved across the country last year. She also doesn't like to talk about it, so I guess I'm curious. So, yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier, but, like, when I was a kid, like, when I was a little kid, my mentality was, I am right to be the way I am because that's what I was told by my mom, and like my mom is right and I trust her. And so like, you know, everybody else is wrong if they tell me that I'm wrong to be the way I am. But then like eventually when I reached 3rd grade, I no longer was getting great grades. And like that was really the main point of pride I had in myself, was that like I'm supposedly smart. And because I'm supposedly smart, I can get good grades in school, and my mom really appreciates that. And when I reached the 3rd grade and my grades started to not be quite as good, and my mom was, you know, strict with me as a result, or like, you know, like basically, not that our relationship became strained or anything like that, but that like I no longer felt as though I was automatically receiving approval from my mom. I now felt like I had to prove myself by getting good grades, and I was failing at that, and therefore I did not have self-worth. It's like my self-worth was tied to my ability to do well in school. And so with me not doing well in school and not feeling like I was being, you know, like I was receiving that same unconditional appreciation and not receiving appreciation from other people, I became depressed and suicidal, you know? And so as a kid, there were periods where I wanted to kill myself, but when I turned 16, there was, at some point I realized that there's no point, like if I'm so suicidal that I'm going to kill myself because I can't be the person I want to be, then it stands to reason that I should just be the person I want to be, because otherwise what the hell's the point of being alive, you know? And in spite of having that realization, I guess I was comfortable with being most of the way there. It's just like I was always comfortable with, you know, with being as much of myself as I felt I could get away with, you know, but anything that I found to be cringeworthy about myself, I would then, you know, hold back. And it's like, for instance, like most of my feminine traits are things that I did express when I was younger, but people told me they were cringe, so I stopped, you know? And it's like, I'm still self-conscious about those things because I was convinced that they were cringe, you know, that I was cringe. And so, you know, anything that I wasn't convinced was cringe, I continued to do. And anything I was convinced, I stopped, you know? So like, ultimately, it's not that I was being true to myself in the sense of true to what I really think is good, you know, because many of the things I still wanted to do, I just was repressing because I had been convinced that they were cringeworthy, you know, not because I actually didn't want to do those things, if that makes sense. So it's like, I grew into myself in the sense that as I grew older and I came to think like, oh, I don't, you know, like these things are cringe. I'm not cringe. I'm cool because I do this and this. And like, you know, I felt a sense of comfort in that I could do those things and be somebody who I didn't consider cringe. But like once I realized that it's like, hey, you don't really think these things are cringe because you clearly want to do them. You just are afraid because you know why other people would consider it cringe. And I guess that's what the key is, ultimately. It's like, if there's something that I don't understand why it would be considered cringe, it's easy for me to just go, well, fuck you, you're wrong. But if I do understand why, like, you know, seeing a man with a beard and hearing a woman's voice come out of his mouth, I understand why that's cringe. So even if I want to talk like a girl, I don't want to be seen as cringe. I don't want to be laughed at, you know? So it's like, I grew into myself in the sense that I found a version of myself I was capable of being that was not too uncomfortable to be. But I was not, you know, actively happy at all times with who I was. I was happy most of the time because, you know, I spend most of my time by myself. Like, I'm not really out there on the internet, like, having to be myself all the time or anything. Like, it's okay if I am, you know, putting on a little bit of a mask when I interact with people. But it's a question of, like, if you start believing in the mask, if you start believing that that's really you, then you lose sight of the ability to have emotional experiences anymore, because it's like I've closed off who I really am, and I can't experience things as that person anymore because I've become this other person, and that other person, you know, I can only be that person by being a certain level of disengaged from my real intentions and emotions, you know? I feel like I'm saying the same thing in a lot of different ways in this video, and just hoping that eventually it makes sense. Is there anything left? Any more things I didn't read? Yeah, here we go. From Departures, this kind of adds into that. I'm curious if in the time that you were the online persona Digibro, if your opinions then are much different than they are now. The Digibro that I've watched over the years seem to have super strong opinions about everything. Now that you've transitioned, do you think that some of those public opinions that you put on the internet have been influenced by your desire to conform to the community's perception of Digibro and your own masculine perception of Digibro? Are they still aligned with your own views and opinions now that you've embraced your feminine side? I would say absolutely. Like, I don't think I was ever particularly, like, dishonest about my actual thoughts on things. I'm only dishonest about, like, the way I present myself. It's like, and even again, like, dishonest is a strong word because everybody is putting on some kind of persona, especially when you're creating content, you know, like, but I guess it's that I'm out here talking about how true I'm being to myself without necessarily being true to myself in all aspects, you know? And I mean, again, like, the trans stuff is not necessarily a surprise to people. It's like, I've talked about these identity issues before. I just hadn't resolved them. Like, I hadn't come to a conclusion. Now I have. And a lot of that is out of the need to abate the dissociation. I realized I never finished that train of thought. This is the help of talking in circles. Is that eventually you get back to the other side of the circle and you go, oh shit, that's right. I have to close this loop. So, you know, the feeling I had of dissociation, of feeling like there is another voice inside my mind that is capable, that like has thoughts that I can't present outwardly. Once I realized that that voice was the real voice, and that the only reason that it would ever become dissociated is that the person I am performing as is not the real person. Once I realized that, that voice went away because that became my voice. Like, to put it another way, like, so I drew this picture. I would really describe my coming out to myself as, I drew a picture of Baroness Grey. And if you follow my content, you might know that I use the name Baroness in all the games I play and stuff. It's just a name that was just one of the many names of characters that I've had that I became really obsessed with and used a lot. I always wanted a place for this name Baroness, so I started using it as like my game handle, and I drew a picture of Baroness Grey in which she is explaining that she is a feminine persona that occasionally bubbles up to the surface of my personality, similar to Boogie Pop, a phantasmal second presence that, you know, that occasionally is in control. But the more I reflected on it, the more I felt like the person who I was describing was more me than whoever isn't that person. It's like, wait, like, if this isn't me, then who am I? Like, if this supposedly other persona isn't the real persona, then what is? And the answer is, there is no other persona. This is the persona. Anything I'm doing that is incongruent with this persona is me just making shit up and lying to myself, you know? And so once I realized that, and once I came out, that disassociation went away. I no longer have these feelings of, like, being a different person on the inside or outside. It all feels the same. It feels like, you know, it feels like things that I used to lock away, I now just take a second to think about how I can express them. You know, it's like, maybe somebody would say something to me on Twitter, and if I couldn't formulate a response immediately that fits within the you know, the character that I'm trying to portray, then I just don't say anything. And so now I look at it and I go, okay, like, well, this is how I really feel. Like, here's my initial reaction. How can I explain that It doesn't have to it doesn't have to be congruent with a overall overarching personality I'm trying to develop. It just has to be an honest answer, you know? And it's a lot easier to come up with an honest answer than it is to come up with an honest answer that also feels like it's coming from the right person, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers that question. I think this is the last one I have from Allied Tadpole. I never really interacted with trans people because I don't interact with people because I feel like I can never explain my ideas to people who don't already accept me. I don't seek out interactions with people because of my cynicism on thinking people will almost always misunderstand me. They will. But you have to get over that. Because the fact of the matter is that most people figure that out when they're very young. And I think that most of us who struggle with these problems are people who are somewhat more sheltered emotionally, or people who ran away from emotional conflict. Like, people who got so frustrated at being misunderstood that we didn't keep trying. And I think that most people, like for me, you know, I moved constantly as a kid. I never had the experience of people being permanently around me, of like not being able to run away from people because they are there. And so you have to deal with them. You have to reconcile these differences because otherwise you're going to have beef with this person forever, you know? And I've only come to appreciate that now that I'm on the internet, because when you block someone on Twitter, they don't go away, they don't disappear, you know, just be like, you might leave a community online, but those people are still online and you're gonna run into them. You're gonna run into them in the world, you know? Your old friends that you thought you'd never see again are still walking around town, you know? And like, it's like, as long as these people never go away, you have to learn how to deal with them. And ultimately that means every person on Earth towards every other person on Earth, because like our ability to resolve the problems with society start with each individual person being changed or convinced, you know? So it's like, you just have to live your life understanding that people don't disappear when you stop interacting with them. So there's no point in trying to pretend they don't exist. You have to acknowledge the existence of other people and work with them until you get to a point where you both understand each other enough that you can, you know, at the very least, both be comfortable and do the things you're trying to do, you know, not impede on one another's ability to live their lives the way that they want to. So, like, you know, when it comes to people accepting you, it's like, for me, I have to have my layers peeled back. It's like, the reason I can't talk to you in a girl voice when I'm doing this podcast is that I don't feel comfortable enough that the person on the other side of this audio will appreciate that voice. In fact, I know that most of them won't. Like, I know because people are already complaining about my voice changes when I've barely changed my voice, you know? So, like, I know that I can't just start talking in a completely effeminate voice and expect that to just be normal and okay with people, you know? But, like, I can be put into a position where I feel comfortable. You know, May can dissolve those layers down, and, like, I've started to notice a lot of my, like, annoying, insecure habits. Like, for instance, I have a tendency to keep saying somebody's name until they acknowledge that I've said it before I talk to them, because I don't like to start talking to somebody and then realize they weren't paying attention or, like, weren't ready. Because, and it's something, I mean, if you try to talk to me, you better make sure you have my attention, because I probably am not, like, I have a big problem of being the issue in this regard. But, it's like, I'll say, like, hey baby, you know, and I won't explain what I want to say until she says yes, and she finds it very annoying, because she'll be like, fucking just say it. Like, why do you keep saying my name? Like, I don't want to have to respond, you know, like, why do I have to dignify this with a response? And it's like, because I just need to know you're paying attention. And, like, it's a comfort thing. It's like, I'm afraid of saying these words and then realizing that you weren't paying attention, so I'm going to go ahead and nip that in the bud by making sure you're paying attention first, you know? That's kind of the way I tend to communicate, and it's like, I'm buttering you up to make me comfortable, but I'm very passive-aggressive about it. Like, I don't want to just tell you, pay attention, because, like, that's too aggressive and like assumptive that you weren't already. But I also don't want to assume that you're paying attention. So like, how do I non-aggressively, you know, ensure that you will do so? Again, this is what passive aggressivism is, and it's general manipulation, and those are things I do very well. Like, but like, I've come to realize, like, you know, the more direct you are, the easier this will be. Like, you don't have to be a dick and just say, like, pay attention to me. But, like, there are ways that you can be direct without being annoying, you know? Where you could just say, like if I say, hey, May, and she doesn't get I don't get a response, I can maybe just look over in her direction or be quiet for a second and wait and see if she'll say something, or, just continue and see if she maybe says that she can't understand me, and not be frustrated that I have to start speaking again. You know, just take that hit and not be so easily aggravated about it. It's just, there's a lot of ways that I could deal with it that could work for both of us, where neither one of us will come out of this interaction upset or feeling as though we were not invited to express ourselves, you know. And I think that one of my greatest human skills is my ability to bring things out of people. I'm very good at getting people to say things, at getting them to tell me what they really feel. And that's why, again, like, I think that my powers are not in my ability to reach a wide number of people. My powers are in my ability to work with people closely and help them in much bigger ways, you know, help them to realize bigger things about themselves and to deal with, like, more emotional issues. Again, a more motherly kind of approach to interaction. So, you know, in embracing that, I get closer to, like, who I really want to be. So, you know, as I was saying earlier, it's like, I want to do HRT and I want to become a woman and be seen as a woman, because the things that I do well are things that I think women do best. I just think that, like, you know, I will be even more capable of the skills that I champion myself, you know, for having, if I'm an even more emotional thinker, if I'm even more feminine, if I'm even more direct about, like, those elements of how I'm thinking. You know, I think that I used to think that because I am biologically male, I will be better at being male. Like, sure, it might seem like the things that I value in myself are effeminate, but surely performing those feelings in the most male way possible will go the best for me because I am biologically male. And this is not proven to be the case. You know, again, I feel the most successful performing as female. So, you know, that's what I'm encouraging myself to do. Anyway, that's it for this this episode. I'm sorry that this one was a little bit more rough than the last one, because this game was not as easy to just freely play as that one. There was a part where I had considered just playing that game again, but honestly, there's, like, I pretty much explored it to, like, the furthest extent I was interested in doing so. I was really indecisive about what game I was going to play next. Like, obviously Zelda, every once in a while, requires you to think for a second, and it's hard to do any thinking and talking in an unbroken string at the same time. You know, this game is great fun to roll around in, but it doesn't quite have the, you know, now, until I get the sail, I won't quite be able to just wander aimlessly over a large amount of land. But hopefully me getting distracted by the game wasn't too much of a problem. Hopefully the difficulty I had in answering some of these questions going around in circles wasn't too annoying. I want to cut the length of these down, and so I will by stopping this one now. Thank you for listening. Leave your comments in the comments below, and I will address any ones that I think are interesting on the next episode, including ones from episode 1 that maybe came in late or that I didn't get to before. I also respond to some comments just by literally responding in the comments, so you know, I'll do some of that. Also, read the description for more information about other places you can find me and other things that I've done. I greatly appreciate when people read my descriptions. That's it. Thank you. Bye.